going to get started with our next presentation. So we're going to start actually with Toni. And Toni Symonds serves as a senior staff to the Assembly Committee on Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy. She's Assembly Member Sabrina Cervantes is the current chair of the JEDE committee, which is the policy committee within California Legislature charged with overseeing issues related to business development, including the expansion of overseas markets for California products, foreign investments in California, capital formation, and workforce and infrastructure development. And I am happy to participate now on this committee. And thank you so much, Toni, for being here today and supporting our work here at California Main Street.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here. As Amanda said, our chair is Assemblymember Sabrina Cervantes. She represents Western Riverside County, and she has been our chair for 3 sessions. And that's just a tremendous advantage for us because it means that we have been able to grow a lot of ideas, pardon me, over time. And so anyways, I actually knew her when she was an intern in the legislature. So it's been a real joy to work for her. Next slide. So today, what I thought that I would cover is I talk about some of the highlights from the 21-22 budget. But let me say that Claire is going to go next. And so she's covering the GoBiz programs and the Office of Small Business Advocate. So I'm not in any way suggesting these are the highlights. I am just making sure that we're going to cover 2 distinct things. I love the new programs that came out. So anyways, we're going to talk about some of the highlights that Claire's not going to cover. We're also going to talk about the State Small Business Credit Initiative very quickly. That's $1.1 billion coming in from the federal government to California for new capital programs. Talk a little bit about the JEDE committee package, which includes a special program, a bill that involves a lot, hopefully involves a lot of people here. And then talk about a couple of the proposals that the governor has in his January budget. That means it will become effective July 1. Next slide. So first off, we have, and as I said, the next presentation is going to cover a lot of this, but we were very excited and the legislature worked with the governor starting in 2020 to do what ended up being a $4 billion small business grant program. So that's probably one of the biggest things. The first time we've done that. So very significant action by both the legislature and the governor. We also did a lot on tax credits, including $200 million for the Main Street tax credit. And that was trying to help businesses get back some money for when they're rehiring. But I'll go into that in a second. But we also got increased funding for the Employment Training Panel, which may be a program you're not very familiar with. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We have a $30 million for Breaking Barriers to Employment, which is another really good workforce program. We have a new $6 billion broadband package that I'm hoping you're participating in because there's real local input that could impact the deployment, particularly for rural areas. And then talk a little bit about the California Economic Resiliency Fund. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this is actually a bill that was jointly authored by our chair. And what this bill does is it authorizes businesses that rehire people. They have to be small businesses, but when you rehire people in COVID, this is allowing you to get some of that money back. It was very successful in the 2021, and they reauthorized it for 21-22. I think there's a discussion now on whether that will go forward again. We also did an increase in our California Competes tax credit. And the California Competes tax credit is quite large. Generally, there are small businesses that can apply, but generally it's larger businesses. It's a little bit unique in that each credit is individually negotiated. And so businesses that are thinking that they're going to grow, this is a much better one for growing. They talk about how many people they're going to hire, how many investments they're going to make, and then they actually say, and I'd like to get a tax credit of this amount, and I'd like to use it in the following years. So it's a very good program. And I think a lot of times we're not using it, we're not thinking about it in the communities that you're working in. But there's no reason why this couldn't be for small or medium-sized businesses. And as I said, it's individually negotiated. So next slide. We also have a lot of new dollars relative to workforce training. And of course, unemployment has been a huge issue. There were 2.7 million people in California that lost jobs in between the first and second quarter in 2020, when we look at the March numbers to the April numbers. And about 80% of that has come back, but still workforce training and trying to help people get into career pathways to higher road jobs is still a priority. So in the current budget year, we actually have $50 million for training incumbent workers through the employment training panel. Now, all businesses that pay a fee on workers, so most for-profit businesses, actually have already paid into the employment training panel. And so this is a way for businesses to get that money back. And why it's such a great program is that the business actually identifies what their need is. And what we know during COVID is this has been especially true. So it might have been that your business was mostly storefront, but during COVID, you've had to go to much more online. And maybe that's made sense for you, and moving forward, you're going to want that even more. So there's 50 million in the general program that is adding to this program so businesses can get reimbursement for training of their incumbent workers as well as new workers. And then there's an additional 15 million, again, for businesses to train their workers, only this is through the community colleges. So that's two programs you may not have thought about talking to your businesses about, but they're eligible. And I would encourage you to go out. Employment training panel is done regionally. So there's actually regional offices that you can invite those people into economic development meetings, or you might want to do a walk down the street with them, but they are available to help. We also put $30 million towards the breaking barriers to employment. Now, these are, I just had a question. So Amanda, the nonprofits are now, because we put general fund money into both the general program and the community college. So yes, normally the program is only available to for-profits, but because there's general fund money, it's now open to nonprofits. So for the breaking barriers, this one is going through our local workforce boards. And I'm sure you guys already have relationships there, but this is $30 million that you can partner. So either the local workforce board can apply or a nonprofit can apply, and you would go for part of these dollars. What these dollars do specifically is for formerly incarcerated. These are targeted populations. It could be women who are have been faced violence and that they're starting over. It could be former farm workers. So it's any of the targeted populations under WIOA. A nonprofit local workforce board partnership can go for this additional $30 million. There's also $25 million that's going through the California Workforce Board to regional equity and recovery partnerships. And these are between local workforce boards, community colleges, and they are also supposed to include nonprofits and other community members. So I just wanted to say those are just four workforce areas that you probably may not know about, but should think about applying. Next slide. The next piece is really more of a planning piece. And what that is that they're doing these broadband master plans. There's a lot of local planning, and we finally have some real dollars that are going out. We'll do an update to the slide deck, and I'll make sure that you have the link so that you can get on the interested parties list. While it may not seem, you guys have many, many tasks that you're doing. So I realize we're not trying to add to your everyday burden, but maybe you have someone on your staff that you can assign to this middle mile and last mile. This is a $6 billion investment California's making. We're seeing the federal government is coming on as well, and there's going to be just a lot of activity. One of the things that you may not know, but if you talk with your businesses, they'll explain it. You may have connectivity, but it may not be fast enough. So it isn't just, are you serviced by broadband, but do you have the quality and the speed that's necessary in order to do a lot of the online things that are becoming pretty mainstream? Next slide. So the the Community Economic Resilience Fund is a $600 million program that if you are not already involved in talking with people, there's been meetings all over the state about it. I would suggest that it may be one of the things that you go back to your community and find out who's working on it. So the way this program works is the state is going to be awarding 13 grants to 13 regions to do comprehensive regional transition strategies. And these strategies, after they're done, are going to be submitted to the state. And then there's going to be $550 million that's available for follow-on. But in order to access those dollars in the implementation stage, it has to be consistent with and supported by the initial plan. This is probably one of the most comprehensive and really progressive programs the state's doing. Now, these plans are quite complex. These are everything from businesses that are impacted in the transition to a lower carbon economy or a net zero economy, as well as historically disadvantaged populations. And so that $5 million grant to the region is to actually pay a facilitator. Yes, the state is going to pay a facilitator to convene what is supposed to be an inclusive planning table. So this is, as I gave you on the slide, this is kind of bringing together that Regions Rise Together initiative you probably heard about, high road training partnerships that have gotten considerable dollars over time. It's also our climate equity program and our regional climate collaborative program. So this is kind of rolling those things together and really trying to get some real input. It would be very important that your communities are involved in this discussion, and the things that have great value, historic preservation, supporting different, the diverse of culture that is in your community. So these are going to be kind of a lot of economic development, a lot of workforce development, a lot of infrastructure development. So that's why I've given you actually two slides. If you go to the next slide, I've given you a little bit more information about the SURF program. I would really check it out if you're not aware of it. Now, originally it was funded with ARPA funds, which you guys have just had a great discussion on. But in February, it's actually been traded out. So part or all of this $600 million is now going to be general fund. And that makes it, and that will have program changes as we go forward. But what you have here on the slide is that the funding is going to go, last of the funding is going to go out June 30, 2024, as far as who's going to get that 550 implementation. But all the funds have to be obligated by December 31st of 2024. And they have to be paid out by December 31st of 2026. So these are very aggressive timelines. And that's why I would encourage you to take the time to learn more about the program. Next slide. These are actually the SURF regions, as well as links to the OPR webpage, a fact sheet more about the program, and then the current SURF guidelines. I am told that we're going to have another round of guidelines prior to the money being announced. We aren't sure when the planning grant RFP is going to be going out, but it will be pretty soon. And this is one of those you want to really move on. The next slide. I mentioned a little bit. I think I might have got this out of order. Anyways, let me. We do have a slide in there that talked about listening sessions. Can you go to the next slide? How about the next one? There we go. So I apologize. Somehow I put it out of order. The Irvine Foundation is actually paying for listening sessions all over the state. Here I've given you the nonprofit SURF webpage, which is a partnership that Irvine Foundation is paying for California Forward, as well as PolicyLink. They're coming together and they're doing events all over the state. So far, they've done Redwood Coast, Eastern Sierra, San Joaquin Valley, Orange County, and Inland Empire. And I also gave you the link to how you can sign up to get more information. Now, if you'd be kind enough to go back to. So Another big opportunity that's coming forward and happening right now is the State Small Business Credit Initiative. I noticed that you've already been talking about small business development. This is $1.1 billion with a B, $1.1 billion coming from the federal government to California for capital programs. The challenge that California has is we have to determine how we would define our own plan. And in fact, California has submitted a plan to do small business loan guarantee program, a loan loss reserve program. We're looking at a loan participation program, a venture fund, and a collateral support program. This is, if you go to the next slide, we're having a hearing on Tuesday to talk more about this. It is on Tuesday from 1:30 to 3:30. You can see where you can view on that, as well as on our committee website. And you've got my website at the front and the back, I think. You can find out more information about this. These dollars will go out through primarily financial development corporations, which are nonprofits all over the state. They're also going out. Technical assistance will be provided by small business development centers, women business centers, veteran business centers, minority business development centers, and manufacturing centers. But there's also opportunities. If you go back to the slide, the previous slide, sorry to make you crazy. There's $500 million that is going to be going out to do technical assistance, and the application's due on June 31st. So California right now is developing the strategies that it's going to use to deploy that. And traditionally, it's the nonprofit sector that we use that $500 million. Now, California is one of 50 states. There's also Puerto Rico, and the $500 million is also for tribal nations. So we're not going to get 12%, but we might get 10%. So it will be a lot of dollars. One of the things we're talking about at the hearing is how are we going to use other programs that the state has, like the Small Business Technical Assistance Center, or the Small Business Technical Assistance Expansion Program that will probably be in the next presentations, and other of the proposals that are out there. How are we going to use them to support the state's deployment of $1.1 billion? Next slide. Next one. Next one. So the Jetty legislative package this year, you can see it. I'm going to just highlight one bill because I want to make sure that we are not taking up too much time. Well, I met Amanda and I met Bianca, and Bianca has been Small Business Majority, participates on a lot of our stakeholder activities. And Bianca said, I got to introduce you to this really great organization. And I met Amanda, and now she comes to our meetings. And as I looked at them and we talked about, well, what's California doing with the Main Street program? Well, you know it more than I do. I'm learning. But as we learned about it, Assemblymember Cervantes, chair of our committee, said, you know what, we need to do something here. And what this bill does, it's AB 2226. It starts to make those connections between the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. They do a great job. You're going to hear about a lot of their programs. They also do programs through the Office of the Small Business Advocate that is under the GoBiz. And the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank is also under GoBiz. So what this bill does is it says that it's going to be taking the GoBiz and making sure that it's got those really tight relationships that are going to be so important with the California Historic Preservation Commission. So the commission, has a lot of expertise in the area, but we want to make sure GoBiz is backing them up. The other thing that it does is it specifically identifies things that GoBiz might share, and then it asks GoBiz to please, when you're doing your geographically targeted economic development activities, make sure you're including the Main Street communities. So it's not that you've never been invited, but you are in a specific area, and we want to make sure it's top of their mind that when they're thinking geographically targeted economic development areas, they're thinking Main Street, and then we've also included our cultural districts. The bill is going to be heard actually in our committee for the first time on March 31st. So it's going to happen soon. I think we're going to get out of our own committee, but then we go to the Assembly Committee on Arts, and so we may need support there. So we do hope that we can get, and there is sample letters, and it has a sample support letter. We hope that you're going to help us with that. And then the other is just expanding it to really tighten these relationships, because it's very clear you guys are a key part of economic development in the state, and we need to make sure the statutes are reflecting that. Next slide. And I just wanted to end because I thought that oftentimes program staff from departments don't talk about new proposals, but I wanted to tell you about just a couple of the things that are on here. And I know that we're limited in time, so I will not go into the different details, but suffice to say that the governor's really put forward some really strong small business technical assistance proposals. He's including making our two largest ones, our SB TAPE, that's our Small Business Technical Assistance Expansion Program, and our California Capital Infusion Program, permanent. So they would have sunset in 2 years. So it's very exciting. The governor's proposing both new dollars as well as proposing to make them permanent. And we think that's the type of local connections that are going to make that $1.1 billion in state small business credit initiative dollars go far, as well as really also playing into getting small business perspective and local community perspectives involved in the $600 million SURF program. The last slide just gives you of how you can contact me.
Well, thank you, Toni, so much. Great information, and we're really excited about the A226 bill that's being proposed, and definitely want to make these direct connections to California Main Street and our communities and all the economic development work that we are doing that is supporting our small businesses and revitalizing our downtowns and our commercial districts. So thank you, really appreciate this. And so we have our next presenter. Clair Whitmire is the Northern California Regional Advisor for the Office of Small Business Advocate at the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Whitmire recently served for 2 years as the Fuse Corp Executive Fellow for the City of Fresno Economic Development Team, helping the city to devise a strategic framework for inclusive economic development. She also been running her own small business, Up Bay Express, since 2020. Prior to being tapped as the Fuse Corp Fellow, Whitmire was head of consumer experience for Maker Media, publisher of Make, and producers of Maker Fair from 2014 to 2019. Her mission is to help grow her region's entrepreneurial ecosystem in pursuit of an economy that works for everybody. And we definitely want to be growing these ecosystems. So I'm happy to have you here, Clair. So take it away.
Thank you so much, California Main Street, for inviting my office to participate today. And thank you for that introduction as well. It's really a pleasure to be here. It sounds to me like y'all have had a really jam-packed, information-dense day, and it's Friday afternoon, and here I am to throw a whole bunch of more information at you. So never fear, I am going to put my email and several links into the chat before I leave you today so that you can follow up on some of the references that I am going to give you, or failing that, just email me directly. I am Clair Whitmire, the NorCal Regional Advisor of the California Office of the Small Business Advocate, an independent office within the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. And there's my longest title in the world. Sometimes introducing myself is the hardest part of this. So I am a field representative. My job is to represent my director in the field and to hear about your concerns and to deliver information, content, and resources to people just like you who are trying to save their local economies. So again, there's my email, but I will put it in the chat as well. And 3 things I want to achieve today. I want you first to understand really the size and scale of this administration's commitment to small business recovery. I want you to have some awareness of the programs that we are currently running. And I want to give you some referrals on specific new regulations that affect small businesses. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this is our mission. CalOSBA is part of GoBiz, but we are an independent office, and our job is to provide information, content, and resources to small businesses and to be their advocate at state government, to our federal partners, and to our local partners. That means representing the point of view of individual small businesses. I like to refer to them as the people who are carrying payroll on their backs. And so in that, guys, we have a field team who is out here to listen to your concerns and make sure that we are available for your questions. We also provide direct support through several programs to small businesses and to the ecosystem. Toni just mentioned some of that, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more. And we are there to provide advocacy for individual businesses and for the small business economy. And lastly, the mission that has become so important in the wake of COVID-19 to help teach businesses how to improve their resilience in the face of business interruptions, which we have had a very brutal lesson over the last 2 years of how impactful that those can be, and how you can never expect them. So here's the part where I remind everybody of the importance of small business to our economy. Small business recovery is all of our recovery. So small businesses defined as 500 employees or less, although the lion's share are businesses with 2 to 9 employees. That represents 99.8% of all businesses in the state of California, 7.2 million workers. That's 50% of the total workforce. So literally, the small business economy is critical to our economic recovery overall. The governor has recognized this with the largest direct investment in small businesses in the history of the state of California and across the nation in the wake of COVID-19. So Toni just mentioned the Small Business COVID-19 Relief Grant Program. That program alone received $4 billion in funding administered by my office in the last fiscal year, and we are about to put some more money towards that program as well. That was not the only program that we stood up this year. There were 7 grant programs in total that put money directly in the pockets of small businesses and nonprofits. And I'm going to talk about some of the ones that are still running. The Small Business COVID-19 Relief Grant, as mentioned before, we spent $4 billion and there were still 150,000 businesses left on that waiting list. So in the current budget, and this is actually already passed, the governor has made good by those 150,000 with a closed round of funding of $150 million to make sure that they are still available, that they are still eligible for their grants. Next slide, please. So here's the part where I'm going to speed walk you through a lot of information very quickly. So if there are questions, just please put them in the chat for me. So this is our go-to judo move, as I like to say it. And Toni mentioned this program as well, the Technical Assistance Expansion Program. This is direct funding to a network of 87 small business centers this year, 87 small business centers across the state of California. That represents 1,000 counselors who offer direct business technical assistance in 30 languages. We call this our boots on the ground network. And I always like to remind businesses that these are free one-to-one counseling and no-cost trainings. And it is the best investment of time that any small business owner can make. So we spend a lot of time referring people, encouraging businesses to take advantage of this network of free resources that can help them answer questions across the spectrum of business needs, from, yes, of course, writing your business plan, to helping you navigate disaster relief funding in case of need. So the URL is there. I will also put that in the chat as promised at the end. So this is the TAPE program, and it is what, as Toni mentioned, and thank you for your support for this, it is proposed to become permanent. It was a 5-year experiment that would have sunsetted next year, and the governor has proposed to take this program and make it permanent because of the success of these services during the COVID-19 period. Next slide, please. So this is the list of programs that we currently have running. So next slide, I'm just going to run through these quickly. The California Microbusiness COVID-19 Relief Grant Program. This is a $50 million pot of money that provides a $2,500 grants to the smallest of the small, defined literally as businesses with $50,000 or less in revenue in 2019 and 5 employees or fewer. It is frequently referred to as the street vendor grant because it's just about right-sized for them. So we have just closed round 2 of this program, and the money is being administered by individual CBOs and by county administrations on a county-by-county basis. Each county got its own individual pool of money. So there is a link to the proper contact on a county by county basis. And again, I will put that in the chat before I leave. So we just closed round 2. Not all of those counties have been announced yet. There are 26 counties that are up and running already. And there will be about 20 to 25 more in round 2, with all of that money flowing to individual businesses by the summer. Next slide, please. California Dream Fund. There's a lot of excitement on for this one, partly because it's got a great name, but partly because it does represent a very unique opportunity. The state of California investing directly in startup businesses with micro grants of up to $10,000 to brand new businesses that have launched since July 1st, 2019. So really focusing on businesses in underserved communities and brand new startups. And in order to make sure that they are ready to wisely apply that $10,000 to their businesses, they have to complete a program of entrepreneurship training at one of 17 small business centers across the state. And again, there is a map, and it looks like it got cut off a little bit on the bottom of that slide, but never fear, because I will put that link as well into the chat. So you have to have launched your business since July 1st, 2019. There is a process for verifying that you formalize your business, for example, registering it with the Secretary of State. And you have to complete the training in order to be eligible for that program. But lots and lots of excitement, lots of demand for that program. We are predicting that it will be significantly oversubscribed. Next slide, please. Inclusive Innovation Hubs. This is our effort to diversify California's innovation economy. And we mean diversification on all fronts, both in terms of the demographics of individual business founders, but also in terms of industry clusters and in terms of geography. So this is a program that is just about to be announced. Stay tuned. Next couple of weeks, we will have a page up announcing the 10 Inclusive Innovation Hubs that received a $250,000 grant each for a network across the state. And this is also, as Toni mentioned, a pot of money that the governor has proposed to increase significantly in the next budget. It was only $2.5 million in any other year. That would have been a significant investment, but it doesn't sound like much up against $4 billion. $2.5 million for this current fiscal year, and next year a significantly bigger pot has been proposed, and I will have some more information about that later. Next slide, please. So this program is still in the process of being stood up. So I'm going simply to say, stay tuned, sign up for our newsletter in order to learn more about the guidelines of the Nonprofit Performing Arts Grants Program. So one of the 7 grant programs that we stood up this year, and this is the last one for this fiscal year. Next slide, please. So one of the other things that we do is really provide training material to help businesses have the skills to do business continuity planning. And that is something that you can see at outsmartdisaster.com. So that is an online virtual on-demand training, but that team is also available to come to local jurisdictions and do one-to-one training. So if you're interested in that, that is something that can, that request can be floated through me. We also maintain a list of disaster relief resources for both COVID-19, obviously, but also wildfires and other natural disasters. Next slide, please. And this is where we work with our partners at IBank. California has invested a significant amount of money in direct capital access for small businesses, including disaster relief loan guarantees that you see here, but there are also jumpstart loans from $500 to $10,000 for small businesses in underserved communities. So there are a lot of programs through IBank. We do not administer these programs at GoBiz, but we spend a lot of time referring small businesses to them. So our mission is to increase access to capital and access to markets, and that is where we focus our advocacy. Next slide, please. So this is a very dense slide. I'm going to give you a lot of information. And Alicia, I had asked you to key up some web links so that we can go through this more quickly, and I can show you the referrals. Whoops, there you go. Monitoring the business climate. There you go. That's what I wanted to look at. So these are all new regulations. Our office does not administer any of these programs, but we recognize that California is a very complex regulatory state. It is not easy. You have to really pay attention to run a small business in the state of California. So we spend a fair amount of time making sure that people have the information that they need about new regulations. This is one that was effective February 19th, 2022. It is the Supplemental Paid Sick Leave Act. So this is a poster that you see here from the Department of Industrial Relations that is supposed to be displayed in every workplace, and it will offer up to 80 hours of supplemental paid sick leave to employees that have been diagnosed with COVID-19, up to 40 hours of people who have had to quarantine because of COVID-19 scares. So this was retroactive to January 1st, and it will be effective through the end of September 2022. So it is a temporary law, but it is a significant one. And this poster is available in Spanish and English. And yes, I will put the link to that in the chat. Next link, please. So this is the alcoholic beverage control. Again, not a program that we administer, but I'm going to focus on some regulations that affect primarily the restaurant industry, and they all went into effect as of the 1st of January. So this was SB 389, off-sale privileges for certain on-sale licensees. And what it means basically is that it made permanent the laws that were put into place during COVID to allow restaurants to deliver alcohol to individual customers. So I'm not going to go through all the details of it, but it did expand the type of licenses that are eligible for this privilege to type 41, type 47, and type 75. Those containers do have to be closed in very specific ways. And if you go down to the bottom of this page, Alicia, just scroll a little bit. Keep going. That yellow button right there, submit alcohol to go notification. So there is a process for letting them know that you have a license and that you intend to do this. So those are the new things that were put into effect as of January 1st. I think the restaurant industry has applauded this one. And we'll move on to the next one, AB 1276. Keep going down. So this is administered by, you can see there, the California Department of Public Health. This is called the Skip the Stuff Law. And it is basically an extension of the Skip the Straw Law of 2018. And the context of this one is that California restaurants that have voluntarily made the transition to a combination of by request and reusable foodware have been proven to save between $3,000 and $21,000 per year. So you see there the AB 1276 fact sheet on this retail food program. And basically, there are several regulations in here, but what it means is that you ask your customer whether or not they need that fork or they need that ketchup packet before you deliver it to them. So there has been a ginormous increase of food waste during the COVID-19 period because we were all ordering food from home, including probably me again tonight. But restaurants got in the habit of putting a lot of unused material in those bags. This prohibits them from doing that. It does require some retraining for teams, but there is a potential ginormous cost savings for individual restaurants who are implementing this law. So I think that this is another good news regulatory change for the restaurant industry. It does not apply, by the way, to correctional institutions, licensed healthcare facilities, residential care facilities, or public or private school cafeterias. So one more that I'm going to highlight today, and that is SB 1383, which has another long title of California's short-lived climate pollutant reduction strategy. Now, this is a law that's being talked about and was actually passed quite some time ago. We first started working on it, we being the state of California, during the Brown administration, but a lot of these regulations kicked in as of January 1st, 2022. And the truth is that you're supposed to know all about this stuff at the local level by this point. But I'm still hearing from a lot of restaurants that there is confusion over what exactly is being requested here. So this is why we wanted to highlight it. And it's very simple, that it's to reduce organic waste. We have a specific goal in the state of California to reduce that waste by 50% by 2020 and 75% by 2025. So we got to compost our food waste, both in the restaurant sector and at home. And the idea, the goal, is to reduce the production of methane gas sources. And landfills are number 3 on the list of methane gas producers, oil and gas fields, large dairies, and landfills number 3. So that is the significance of this law, but it is quite complex. So if you scroll down a little bit, Alicia, you'll see that there are a bunch of elements of this. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. See, I told you it was SB 1383 regulations. So keep scrolling. I want you to stay right there with food recovery and capacity planning. A little bit up. Now too far. So there's collection and recycling, both in your business and at home. There is a procurement effort associated with this to make sure that new government contracts are available, and food recovery and capacity planning. So this actually requires restaurants to recycle food waste in a new way. And again, I'm not going to go through all the details of that, but I will point you to where you can find some more information. And there is one more link for capacity planning. It is the responsibility, there you go, the responsibility of the local agencies to make sure that everybody knows about this. in effective January 1st, 2022. And this page has a lot of information. They've tried to help you prep with that, starting with that poster. But if you go down the page a little bit, Alicia, you'll see that there's a PowerPoint, there's a video, there's a one pager, there's a training video series. There's a lot of help to be able to for local agencies to implement this this new law. So again, I will give you the referrals in the chat, and I'm just going to go through one more slide, which is back to my slides. I made Alicia really work for this one. Thank you. So just go back one more. So small business investments out of this governor's office. I mentioned earlier the $150 million in new SBCRG grant funding and $23 million per year in permanent tape funding. We've talked about those two as well. There's also going to be an additional $20 million per year over 4 years for the iHub program, which is going to be rebranded Accelerate California. This is a little known one that I like to point out to people. The governor has proposed Secretary of State fee waivers for registering small businesses through June 30th, 2023. That alone is worth $30.8 million. And people often lose out on grants because they did not register their business properly. So in recognition of that, we want to help people get their businesses recognized. And that is the purpose of the fee waiver. He has also proposed $20 million in grants. This is one-time funding for people who have been impacted by retail theft. So that will be voted on and made, turned into law by July 1st on the current budget schedule. There is also proposed, and Toni mentioned this as well, part of that SSBCI funding is to create, for the first time in the state of California, although not the first time in the country, a $200 million venture capital program administered by IBank. So the guidelines for that are still being written. I think there's still a lot of questions about how that will be rolled out. But that is something else that is in the works and that will impact small businesses in the state of California. So just one more thing. And next slide, please, Alicia. I want to remind everybody to sign up for our CalOSBA newsletters. Like I said, we're running a lot of programs. You can see my director pictured there, and keeping up with them, the easiest way is to sign up for our CalOSBA newsletter. So I never give a presentation without reminding people to do that. And the last slide is our contact information, and I will try to catch up with a lot of this in the chat before I leave you today. So if there are any questions, and let me know.
Well, thank you so much, Claire. Thank you, Toni. I mean, obviously, such great information, so much money and funding and grants and things that are out there and available to us and to our programs and our small businesses. So we just have to figure out how to access all of these resources. And I think we can help one another to do that.